And my research mainly focuses on fact-checking and explainable AI. And what else can I say? At the University of Copenhagen, I'm also the head of the NLP section, which is a collection of about 40 researchers, both faculty members and PhD students and postdocs. Yeah.
So maybe for those of us that are not familiar with the European system, you can explain a little bit about what the position means, being head of a section.
Okay, so it's essentially like a small department. So we have departments which are several hundred people, and because they're very large, there are also these research groups essentially, or mega research groups called research sections in our case, and it's just the smallest administrative unit, if you will. And so we have some events like reading groups, and we have the within the section that we have to take care of, and machine learning courses and so on. So yeah, that's what that means.
Thank you. So Gabriel, can you tell us a little bit about who you are, your background?
Yes, I did my PhD in Amsterdam, natural language processing. I did my PhD in natural language parsing. Then I moved back to Argentina. I am from Argentina and started the NLP group here in Argentina. The first one, I think, was from Argentina, and worked in academia for, I don't know, 15, 20 years. And then I decided to move to industry. I started my industry journey in Intel Corporation. I worked there for a project related to NLP that was trying to develop a dialogue assistant. Then I moved to security, working for McAfee. I did not that much there related to NLP. Then I moved to Proofpoint. Proofpoint is a company that protects companies from spam or attacks based on email. And there on here, I'm working again with NLP, trying to detect phishing campaigns, spam, and all sorts of things that can hurt users and companies. Yeah.
All right, so with that, let's start with some of the questions that we have prepared for you. Let's just address one question about Gabriel. I'm going to start with Gabriel. You were in academia and then you moved to industry. Why did you decide to do the jump?
It was a difficult decision for me to make because I was very comfortable in the position. I was almost at the top of the career there, but I felt kind of bored there because of the type of problems that we were facing, and didn't find someone in my university at least that I can reflect on. So I decided to start seeing around and working on in industry. Unfortunately, I found a position in Intel in which I had to do in research and development. It was not necessarily focused on NLP, but all my background in artificial intelligence in general gave me the capabilities to work there as a researcher. And I do not regret moving to industry. I found many more problems. And I think that now in retrospective, I think that the main difference is that in most cases, industry has the question and the academia has the answer. So industry, you can find very interesting problems. They are a bit old and you have to resort to off the shelf. You don't have the time to do the research and development, but the problems, at least in my case, were much more interesting.
All right. So Paco Guzman is here. Hi, Paco. So glad you were able to join us. We just got started. We started with a short introduction from our panelists. So if you can please tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, and what do you do at Facebook? Oh, we cannot hear you.
Can you hear?
You're muted. Oh.
Yes, yeah. Now it
Perfect.
works.
Okay, thank you so much for the invitation. I was having some technical problems, but now everything is solved. So glad to be here with everybody. My name is Paco Guzman Francisco, as many people in Mexico will know. I'm originally from Ciudad Victoria, Tampico, Ciudad Victoria, Tamaulipas. I did my undergrad in Tec de Monterrey. I did also my PhD there and spent some time at Carnegie Mellon University during my PhD years. I did my postdoc at Qatar Computing Research Institute in the Middle East in Qatar. And since 2016, I joined Facebook, August 2016, so almost 5 years now. Right now, I am a research scientist manager at Facebook Fair in Menlo Park. And I'm working in machine translation. I've been working on machine translation since my dissertation, my thesis, and different aspects of machine translation. And right now I'm working on very low resource machine translation. I'm so glad to be here, and hopefully I can give you some tips on how to do research in industry.
Thank you. That was great. So Gabriel was just discussing the reason behind why he decided to transition from academia to industry, and then he talked a little bit about how the problems come from industry, and I guess the ideas come from academia or something like that. I'm sorry, I'm just rephrasing. I was wondering if Isabel, you want to comment on this? Oh, well, yeah, go ahead.
No, I was telling you that you did it correctly, and that's the idea.
Okay. Isabel, have you been tempted to go to industry? You're studying to get your feet wet in that field, I guess, with a startup, right? You want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So I hadn't worked in industry at all before then. I didn't even do an industry internship as a PhD student, so it was completely new to me. And the reason I said yes is probably a combination of timing, the position itself, and who asked me. So I did my postdoc at University College London, and the startup was founded by some people I knew from back then, who actually also had Facebook. Speaking of Facebook. Yeah, so I mean, it was just a good personal connection. And then the startup was on a topic, really on the core topic of my research, detecting harmful content. And so I thought I could really contribute something there. They also asked me to lead the research team or co-lead the research team, as opposed to just being a research scientist or engineer. So I felt like I could really contribute something and also help shape the culture and really help build up the startup, right? And then in terms of the timing, when they asked me, I already had tenure. And so I felt a bit like, what's next? Kind of, what's my next challenge? Obviously, I want to become full professor, but what else? So it felt a bit like I was ready for a new challenge at that point. Yeah. And in terms of the thing about the problems and the solutions, I definitely feel like I'm learning more about the problems now being in a startup, because we're talking to all of these companies who want to moderate their content, who have problems with harmful content on the web, hate speech, and so on, right? And of course, you learn something about that working in academia, but it's more of an abstract concept, because someone annotates the data, then there's this benchmark data set, and you just kind of fit your model to it, and that's it. You don't really think about what do people actually want to do once they get the predictions, for example, from the models. Yeah. So.
Yeah, that's true. Very, very interesting. That's also, very reasonable. Once you get to your academic tenure, for example, you achieve other advancements in your academic career, then we'll start thinking about what's next, right? I'm like you. I also did, by the way, never touch industry, and I'm about to jump a little bit for a temporary position. So I'll tell you like next year. I can tell you whether I like it or not. All right. So there are some questions here about for the students that are preparing and they're thinking about, what do you guys think are the skills that are most valuable when transferring from academia to industry, and what skills should a person from academia achieve in order to transfer successfully to industry? So maybe we can start with Paco. You also did a switch from, yeah.
I just want to say something before that I think it's interesting. Both Paco and Isabel are also transitioning to managing positions. And it's usually something very common. I don't know why, but for instance, I am still an individual contributor. So I'm still very technical in the field. And I see a lot of people with PhDs or that have an academic background that move to management. So I want to ask why they move to management.
Okay, so how about this? We talk about the first question first, and then we talk about management in the second round.
Go ahead.
I would love to give you my own scoop on that, my own take. Okay, so what skills once you're transitioning into industry? So I have to say, the culture of Facebook, this move fast, is very, very real. So once you join, it's not only you moving fast, but everybody moving fast. And there is like a tsunami of information coming your way, right? There's so many channels. There's so much that you want to know. And as a scientist, and we have all this curiosity, right? And we want to learn and we want to know everything. And at a certain point, you have to realize that that is not possible, that there are not enough hours in the day for you to know everything. So one of the first things that you need to realize in industry is to prioritize what is important for me to know and what can I let go. And I see many junior scientists joining the company and struggling with this, or people coming from academia joining the company and struggling with this. How do I prioritize what is important, what is high signal, and what is noise for what I need to do, right? The other thing that I would say is this notion of kind of trying to perfect things, right? In industry, it's a little bit different. So as a scientist, you want that whatever data you're producing is perfect, right? It has zero faults. It's very oriented, detail oriented. Sometimes this is a great thing to have, right? I'm not saying anything against that, but if you're in a project with other people, you have to balance between getting a full iteration, right? And then iterating over that. And what do I mean by that? You think about a project that has several components. You could spend a lot of your time on one single of these components, right? One of your algorithms, and trying to make it perfect, but then not working on the others. Or you can work in an end-to-end solution so that you can have something at the end and you can get feedback over that final output to see how to iterate. So, and I think that's a different type of mindset. In academia, we want to have, that each single component is the best of the best, but it could be that the best of the best in each single component is not the best global solution, right? It's the best local solution, but it's not the best global. So having feedback in a global way, it's much better. It allows you to iterate faster and arrive to a better global solution than if you just focus in one single component at a time. And I could keep going, but yeah, those are two things that really struck me as different in the industry.
So the prioritizing what you want to learn, and also the differences in, I guess, the speed of things, right? In academia, we take our time because we have plenty of time. There's always the next deadline, whereas in industry, there's other pressures. Isabel, do you want to? Oh, sorry, yeah.
Sorry, just before that second point, I just would frame it differently. Is it doesn't have to be perfect at the first pass, right? You have to think that it's not final. That is something that's going to keep improving.
Work in progress.
Yes.
Isabel, do you want to comment on this?
I would definitely agree with that, but at the same time, I don't work in an applied NLP team, so I've not really dealt with that specific thing myself. One thing I'd like to add, though, is that to me, the core difference between working in industry and in academia is that in academia, the culture is very individualistic, meaning people really care about what their contribution is and about promoting themselves. Whereas in industry, it's a lot more about achieving something as a team, and it's less important who achieved exactly what, as long as the task is achieved. And that also means that, at least what I've seen, more people tend to work together than in academia, where it's often one PhD student and their advisor, or at least that happens quite a bit.
Right. Gabriel?
Yes, those are also very good points, I believe. And I would like to add 3 more that I've been thinking. I think that one of the key skills that PhD students have when they move to academia is the capacity to do abstraction, to abstract away the complexity of the problem and think all the problems in a higher level of abstraction. And this is related to what Paco said, that in industry there is a lot of noise. So the way in which you handle complexity and noise is by means of abstraction. And I think that people coming from academia are very good at this. And the other thing that is also related to what the other said, and I think that it's important to detect the blind spots, to detect where your process or where your procedure has faults or that need improvement. But you still have to be able to detect where they are and to live with them. And I think that another differentiator is the technical skills. So people coming from academia are in general, they have more profound way of thinking and more, let's say, the tool set that they have is richer. I think this is what I have seen in my experience. Yeah.
Thank you. So we can go back to the other question that was also very interesting. So how come, I agree with Gabriel, when I see people transitioning from academia to industry, I do also, it's more often that we see them transition into managing roles in industry as opposed to individual contributors. And that happens, but not at the same frequency. So maybe you guys want to address that comment?
Do you want to start, Isabel?
Yeah, I mean, for me, that was really more of a strategic thing. So I had other points in my career when I could have transitioned into industry, but then what was offered to me was really just a position as an individual contributor. And I personally wasn't that interested in that, because what I like about academia is working with the team, but also driving the research agenda of a team. Yeah. And it's slightly different in industry, but I also really, really enjoy that about the industry position I have. And yeah, I think it really depends on at which career stage you make that transition. If it's directly after the PhD, of course, you won't have a leadership position in industry. It doesn't mean you will never have one, but you just won't have one to start with.
Yeah, for me, it was a process, right? It's number one, it's about playing to your strengths. I think talking about strengths is really important. At least at Facebook, we keep talking about strengths, and strength is not what you're good at, is the things that you enjoy, right? And me realizing what I enjoy and what I'm good at the same time. I am good at getting things done, right? I'm good at getting people together towards a goal. This is something that I did while I was doing research, but also, at my industry experience. This is something that resonates with me. This is something I do well, right? So for me, the next step is whether I want to keep being an individual contributor or becoming a manager. And becoming a manager at Facebook may be slightly different from other places, but the job of a manager is twofold. The first one is making sure that people grow, right? and people make progress in their career. And the second one is making sure that the team is successful. That means that we are getting to the goals that we set to do. And both of them resonate very well with me, right? I do care about people. I do care about making people grow. That's why I'm here, right? I care about elevating people. And I do care about getting things done. So for me, it was, once I made my mind about it, it was an easy call. But to get to that point, to make my mind about it, it took me a while, because there's also all of these questions, at least for me, right? Am I making the right decision? Am I sacrificing my research career, right? The things like that weigh in when you make these decisions. But when you understand, I understood that this plays to my strengths, and I can become more successful by playing this role, then the decision was really easy for me to make. I cannot generalize to everybody, because I don't know how the strengths of everybody are, where they are, but for me, this is something that resonated with me.
Gabriel, do you want to comment on this? Why have you stayed an individual contributor?
I think it's because what Paco said, it's you don't have people skills. So you have to be able to help people and willing to help people. And I mostly enjoy working with computers. But nevertheless, in my daily job, I plan a strategy for how to solve the problems and all these kind of things. But I think that you need a particular skills to be manager. And I think for myself that I don't have them. So, yeah.
Okay, very interesting. So now I'm going to let Jimena take over the discussion from here. So Jimena, if you want to move on to the next question.
Yes, thank you, Tamar. So yeah, we have a set of questions, because before this session started, we were just asking the student where their main concerns about academia and industry. So apart from that, we also have some live questions, but I will start just by reading some of the questions that we compiled before the session. So one recurrent question between the students or the attendees that are probably watching the session is, do you have any recommendation about deep learning frameworks or the type of technology that they should practice the most in the case they want to join the industry? So they were mentioning names like PyTorch, TensorFlow, but in general, is there a set of tools that you would recommend for them? So I don't know who wants to start. Maybe Isabel, we can start with you.
Right, so the answer might be different because I'm in a startup, but yeah, I mean, we work with PyTorch and with Jupyter Notebooks and Hugging Face as well, and deep learning models there, just the API. And then also, I would say data visualization skills are important. So like Matplotlib or something like that. Yeah, in general, good Python skills. And also, I would say being able to monitor experiments and so on, which is also something you do as a PhD student, but running them and then evaluating them. So making sure you don't start the same job 10 times or so on. And that's maybe less of a technology thing and more of a personal management thing. Yeah.
Thank you. Gabriel, do you have some advices?
Yes, I think that there are many tools that people can learn, and I think they're valuable. But I see a gap in the industry now between data science in general and the industry in particular. And I think that we see a lot of CVs that are about data science, and not all of them. It's very rare to find people that understand data engineering. And I think that I will also recommend people to pay attention to data engineering, to be able to write pipelines that will curate the data, to be able to think about ways to monitor the models, to check the drifting of the model. My advice is to focus on this, a bit more focus on this, and I think that will make more a compelling CV. Yeah.
Thank you. That's very interesting.
Yeah, and I also have another suggestion.
Mhm.
We also see in the people coming to industry that they often have contributions to open software. So I think this is also a very nice way to become masters on these tools, is try to contribute to them. Yeah. Be part of the community. Yeah, that will be the punchline.
Cool. And finally, Paco.
So I'm gonna be super partial here. Definitely PyTorch, right? And FAIRSIG, and you know, it's easy to use PyTorch. You have a lot of companies behind it, and it's not just Facebook, but it's been adopted by several companies. So definitely, if you're going to invest, I would recommend PyTorch. There's also there's also TensorFlow and Keras, but in general, PyTorch has been adopted by the scientific community much more. So you see much more open source code that is written with PyTorch. So my recommendation, not just because of Facebook, but also because it's being used by the community a lot, is PyTorch. The other thing is statistical analysis, and this relates a little bit to what Isabel was saying. Being able to analyze your experiments will give you a huge boost, a leg up whenever you are writing a paper, right? So thinking about design of experiments, statistical analysis, statistical theory, these are things that are not very common, but when you see a paper that does a very nice analysis, it's a boost to the paper, right? So I think that is something that you don't need GPUs to do. You just need to learn either R or pandas, and nice visualizations. These are things that would be a nice complement to your career. And I totally agree with Gabriel. Data is super important. This is, you know, if on one side you can invest in statistical analysis, that's one thing. If on the other side you're good at data pipelines, that will be also a good boost, because there's nothing more liberating than being able to take, you know, terabytes of data, bend them, and extract the type of data that you need for doing your type of analysis, and doing machine learning on top of them. So that is definitely something to look at. And the third thing, I as a PhD student, something that changed my life, it's better time management. So when you're writing your thesis, you know, it's very common. There are all these memes about procrastinating, right? And, you know, really, you want to do everything else except your thesis. But learning to manage your time well, it's a huge advantage. So getting things done, like learning the book about getting things done, or adopting the Pomodoro technique, you know, these are small techniques that allow you to focus and be able to be productive for a span of time. That I can tell you that is a game changer, right? Both in academia and in industry. So having better time management definitely would be on the top of my list.
Cool. Thank you, Paco, for sharing these very concrete tips for us. And as a follow-up question for this, Paco, Ibrahim Sharaf asked do you recommend some specific resources to learn more about the statistical analysis in general, significance test, etc.?
There's a lot of theory about it, but there's a book that I can look at in a minute and post the Amazon link here. There is a book about design of experiments, of empirical design of experiments, and all the different techniques that you can follow to analyze the results, and when it's right to use a parametric test like a t-test, etc., or when it's better to use a non-parametric test and bootstrap sampling and stuff like that. So just reading about this and how they can affect the conclusions of your experiments is really important. We don't tend to give that much importance in computer science, but I think that just thinking about this can really open up doors. So I will look for the reference and give post it there.
Thank you. Maybe one important thing that we should mention about this school and also the panel is that several of the attendees, they come from very different backgrounds. So many of them, they are just starting their careers in NLP, and many of them come from a linguistic background. So they usually see all these talks and everything, and they have this constant question of how to start or which are the skills. So Francisco, well, another Francisco, your tocayo, Paco, he asked, well, he says that he has a background in linguistics. He has a bachelor on languages and Hispanic linguistic and everything. But if you have some recommendations for people with a background in linguistics in order to, yeah, I guess to join also in this industry opportunities and also academia in NLP. So we can start with you again, Isabel, if it's all right.
Sure. I think the one important thing is to really play to your strengths. So I mean, don't think of having a background in Hispanic linguistics or so on as a downside. Of course, if you want to work in natural language processing, you have to pick up some skills like Python programming or so on if you've never done it before. But I would say if you have a background like that, then try to find a PhD program that's relatively close to that topic, as opposed to one, for example, on theoretical machine learning or some such, but maybe something in computational linguistics, NLP for historical languages, or something like that. I think that it makes more sense just because then the learning curve might not be as steep, but also then you might be a better candidate for the position. And from then on, you could then work on all kinds of topics once you get comfortable with that, I would say.
You're muted, Jimena, so we're not.
Yeah, sorry. I was just saying, Gabriel, do you have something to share about
Yes,
it?
I think that the question there is, what do you want to do? If you want to work as a linguistic person, like doing annotation, or I don't know how, but where do you want your career to move? If you want to work in more machine learning or data science oriented, then you have to pick up these things and start to learn things that can help you in changing that direction. But nevertheless, I think that there is a lot of jobs posting for linguistics people, and I've seen or I have been asked to help on that. For instance, you have this Rasa bot that probably help, that will need a lot of people that understand the linguistics behind dialogues in order to fine tune them. But for sure, you are not going to be developing the Rasa models behind it. But I think, again, the question is, what do you want to do with your career?
Thank you. And finally, Paco, would you like to comment something on this?
Yeah, sure. I've dealt firsthand with linguists, and I've seen how different backgrounds have different outcomes, right? I think that your background in linguistics, and seems to be your passion, and that's great. I love language myself, and this is why I eventually went for machine translation, because this is one way of using AI to enable language learning and translation into other languages. I think that me learning about linguistics and learning about the languages and the language families and the different type of, typology, etc., do give me a leg up, right? To know a little bit more of language. But again, what Gabriel was saying, it's very important. What do you want to do? Do you want to pursue a PhD? Then what Isabel was also saying, it's important, right? So look into probably computational linguistics and whatnot. If you do not want to do a PhD, then I would say if you want to be very successful, you need to get very technical. There's no two ways around it. I've seen it firsthand. As I said, I have linguists who are very technical, right? That on top of their passion for language, they also know how to do Python, how to do some statistical analysis, and that makes a difference, right? Because that helps the whole team to move faster. That helps to make generalizations, etc. If you have one linguist that is only working on annotation and only focusing on linguistic stuff, that's nice, but that's not as advantageous as having a technical background. And the last thing that I want to say is it could feel isolated as a linguist or many very constrained, but I would actually look at where do your strengths could help others. Think about what projects need the type of analysis that you can bring to the table, and reach out to that people and say, hey, you're working on this project, can I contribute? You can volunteer your time, right? If you're working with researchers that may not have many resources, you can volunteer your time. But the idea is to get something on your CV that says, I collaborated in this project, So you kind of create a reputation that later on you can come up and to any company and say, hey, I have experience in such and such projects, and I can bring something to the table.
I think it's very valuable that linguists that are here in the room, they can hear from first hand how to incorporate and this type of skills that they should have. I would also like to add that, I also work a lot with linguists, and I don't know, I guess we should keep in mind also the fact that linguists, they could also have like a lot of quantitative reasoning, right? It's not only about annotation and everything, but definitely there is this gap between how can they join or how can we join really an industry. And I think it's very important to be aware that, we have to get also the technical part, and that it's something that you cannot really avoid. And continuing with this line, we have already some questions in the chat, apart from the ones that we compiled before. Remember, for the attendees, if you want to speak, just ask so we can unmute you. Otherwise, Tamar or we can read the questions. So Emmanuel Santos, he says that he's interested in research. He has published some papers as undergraduate, but he also likes to build things. And oops, sorry, lost it. Yeah. So do you think that a master's degree is useful to work both in industry and research? Maybe this time we can start with Gabriel, just to make a change.
I think so. It also depends on the company and on the project that you land in the company, because there are some companies or some projects inside the companies that they don't have time or space for doing research. But probably you can spend some time there and start to see where you can move and search inside the company. There are some companies that are big enough that would allow you to move around and to search for the research problems. But I think, yes, it's like you have to serve the company. You have to aim for companies that actually do research and search for a job there. And I think that the master it's already something good to have in order to search for these kind of jobs.
Thank you. Isabel, do you have a take on this?
Sure. So I think it depends a bit on if you looking to work in Europe or in the US or in you know wherever. So in Europe, there are many places where you need to have a master's degree to do a PhD. In the US, I know it's not. It's not needed. I don't know what it's like in Mexico, so I can't really say. In industry, it's not necessarily needed to have a master's degree, but then the positions are often restricted to something like a research engineer as opposed to a research scientist. So I would definitely say go do a master's degree, especially if you're unsure about what you want to do afterwards, because you would only improve your chances.
Yeah, so just to clarify, in the Mexican system, it's very similar to the European system. So you go straight first to get a master's degree. You don't get admitted directly to a PhD program. Even if that's your long-term goal, you first are admitted to a master's program, and then you have to apply for a PhD program.
So I have to disagree there, Tamar. I did jump in directly. Well, yeah, you can. There are some universities that do have direct PhD. So you do have to take all the master's courses, but when you take direct PhD, you don't get the master's degree in the middle, right? So, so
maybe
you don't
that's a newer thing, because when I was studying, I didn't know that was possible. Although all the programs I know of have first masters as a prerequisite, yeah.
Anyway, just to add more color to these answers, I think I agree with what Gabriel and Isabel has been saying. It all depends on what you want to do. If you want to be doing research, I would really recommend getting a master's in, say, machine learning or something very applied to the area that you want to start doing research. I have to say that doing a master's will make sure that you're more specialized in a certain area. But for a company like Facebook, for example, that wouldn't immediately put you in a research position, right? So that will increase your chances that you would end up. So just how hiring works at Facebook for newly grads. If you are hired as a newly grad, you go into what is called bootcamp, and then you do not get assigned position. You kind of are within Facebook on the market for teams, right? And a team that is doing machine learning may pick you, but it may not be the case, right? So if you have a computer science background, you will end up doing something like software engineering. If you have a master's background, you still go into the same pool, but because you have that master background, it will increase your chances of a ML related team to pick you up. If you're doing a PhD, for sure, your chances of getting into a research scientist position are much better, right? So that's why what the difference I would say it makes. It doesn't mean that you cannot go into do research without a master's. That's not necessarily true, but it would require you to put extra hours and show that you have some experience doing machine learning. So your profile becomes more attractive to others. I'd also, there are scientists that are not necessarily don't have a PhD, but they have a lot of applied research or research experience, and that justifies hiring them as a research scientist, as somebody who can lead a research project, right? But usually the type of skills that you require to do so are gained through a PhD program.
And also the company has to be able to do research. If you go to a startup, then there is, well, depend on the type of the startup, right? But the probabilities of doing research there are smaller.
We have two questions, actually like going in the two directions of this panel. So one is focused on academia and the other one is focused more in industry from two attendees from Mexico. So first in academia, Diego Barriga, he asked, well, he says that he really wants to do an academic career, but he thinks it's very difficult to get a good position at the university as a researcher. So do you have any advice on how to go down this path as smoothly as possible? I mean, in the way that, is it possible to make a living from research without spending so much time in financial uncertainty? So we can start with Paco this time.
So I don't know if I'm the best qualified person to talk about this, because I early on in my career I did a postdoc, but it was on a research lab. So I never considered the tenure track myself. So I decided that this is, I had enough stress in my life to go for tenure track and live with this uncertainty for a few years. So maybe Isabel, do you wanna answer this, or Tamar?
I think I also don't know if I'm the best qualified person to talk about it, because I think I was very strategic with the places I picked, such that there wouldn't be financial uncertainty. Maybe that's one way of circumventing this whole thing, but yeah, so for example, where I currently am at the University of Copenhagen, the tenure track system is such that it's pretty much guaranteed to get tenure as long as you fulfill the list of requirements. So it's not like you're competing with 10 other people for one position or such. It's just about individually fulfilling criteria. So from when I started, I knew it would be a permanent position. That's one thing. Then of course, the whole postdoc experience, that's quite an uncertain period. And I think that was the most uncertain period of my life, going for a postdoc, then not knowing how long it would be for, and if I would get a tenure track position and so on. But I think for that, what really helped me was just networking. So for both the postdoc position, I knew the person I'd worked with beforehand, and I heard about the position before it was advertised, and the same thing for the tenure track position. So, it's really difficult now during Corona, but attend these events, attend conferences, talk to people, go to careers fairs and so on. Make sure you hear about these opportunities before they're announced. That's how it worked out for me. It's probably not like that for everyone. Yeah.
Thank you, Isabel. And Gabriel, would you like to comment something on this?
Yeah, I think it depends very much on the market and on the country, right? So every country has a different market situation. If you have to compete with others, then you have to be somehow better than the others. But it's difficult to say, because it depends very much on where you are. Here in Argentina, I think it will be very difficult now to get a tenure position. When I got mine, it was a different times, and there were plenty, so that was not that hard. But I think that things have changed here now, and I really don't know how people will do it. But yeah, but it's mostly government funded, so you have to wait until a better economical situation.
Yes, I guess Tamar, she also has something to comment on this.
Yeah, I mean, being that I did the whole tenure track thing, and I'm actually moving to food professor soon. Yay, finally. So I just first want to comment that nothing is easy. So if the student that asked the question is concerned about the transition, it's really hard. I can tell you that the very first time I applied for an academic position in the US, I got 0 callback, like totally crushed the job market situation here. Like no one ever even, called me for a follow-up interview. But I was really determined. Like I really knew I wanted to do that. That was my dream job. And so for those of you who didn't know, I did my PhD in Mexico. So similar to Paco as well. My PhD is from INAOE. And I realized that that was the barrier. And so what I did is, well, I got into a postdoc, even though like Isabel is a very uncertain position, but I got 2 years of a postdoc position. And I said, this is it. It's a make it or break it situation. So if I don't get a job offering after my postdoc, that's it. But I was very lucky. I did it. I worked really hard, and I got my first tenure track position. So it's possible. The situation in Mexico as well, I mean, it's a little bit different because it depends, like it was mentioned, in the government budget, but it's possible as well. I would recommend, though, that if you can leave Mexico for a little bit to do your master's or your PhD or even a postdoc position, because the reality is that it becomes easier for Mexican institutions to bring you back if your goal is to end up in Mexico as a professor. And I'm sorry, I can only talk about what the things I know. So for Mexico, it's easier to ask for money to bring someone from outside back. So that's a path that will make it easier for you. You're competing with less people than if you stay there for your master's, PhD, postdoc. It will make it harder for you to be hireable. But I'll be happy if you want to contact me offsite. I mean, just work hard. There's nothing that can make up for working hard, and it may take longer. For me, it took a longer path, but I got there. So it's possible.
Thank you, all of you, for sharing this valuable experience. And now we have a question that goes in a direction of industry, also from attendees that are starting their careers. So they ask, when applying to an industry position, for example, just as a junior scientist, is it expected that you are an expert or close to an expert, or is there some training period to acquire knowledge in the tools that are used by the company? So I don't know, we can start with you, Gabriel.
Okay, so if the position says junior, I think it's expected to be a junior, and the company will help you develop in your skills. So I think that you should start applying directly and also playing the interviews and see what the people ask and try to get a feeling of what the companies are looking for. Also do a bit of homework by looking at the different job posting and try to understand there what the market is needing. But also, again, that depends on the company. Some companies have the capacity to wait you, to teach you, and to promote you, as Paco is telling, and others don't have that capacity. So I think you should start, and also don't be afraid of going to a company and don't feeling like comfortable in a company and move to another company. I think this is something that you can do, and it will improve the how you choose your next job. I think it's important to try and fail in a way. Don't be afraid.
Isabel, would you like to share your opinion?
Yes, so I don't think you're expected to be an expert on everything. I mean, whenever there is a job posting, there's usually a set of required criteria and optional criteria. And I would say even for the required criteria, you're not supposed to be an expert on that. You're just supposed to have good skills in those. And there will always be something that will be new to you in a company or in academia or wherever. There's always something to learn. And it's expected that it takes time to learn things. So I mean, I wouldn't be worried about that. Of course, if the main thing you do in the company is to build some machine learning models with PyTorch and you've never touched PyTorch, that might be a bit difficult, but yeah, you don't have to be an expert, I would say, definitely not.
Thank you. Paco, what do you think about this?
I think as a junior, again, at Facebook, things are slightly different. Everybody who joins a company joins this, what is called a bootcamp. And this is like 2 months of really in training on everything about Facebook and the tools that the company uses. So you're not expected to know what Facebook is using internally. This you are going to learn, right? What we're looking for is for people with the capacity, number one, to learn, to adapt to changes, right? And that's why, you know, when we're interviewing, we ask you to solve problems or to research problems that you have never seen before, because what we're looking at is that you're able to not only work in the niche that you know, but if we take you, would you be able to solve machine learning problems in a different setting, right? We want to test your analytical skills, your capacity to apply what you know, the state-of-the-art models that you're familiar with into a new setting. So this problem-solving skills, rather than you being, you know, the expert in a particular situation. So unless, you know, more senior candidates who have developed a research agenda, that's slightly different, right? We would like to hire them because of their expertise in a certain area, their capacity to innovate and lead others. But for junior candidates, the main selling point is that you're able to solve problems using the tools that you learn along your career.
Thank you. There was a very frequent question. It was a concern of several of the attendees, and maybe it's a bit broad or general, but maybe you can share your experience. And it's related with applying for positions, for instance, in academia. So we received this question several times. If you can share some tips or, I don't know, advices of, for instance, how to apply for a PhD, how to contact a supervisor, what is the typical steps in this process. So students are asking for some recommendations in this quest of getting accepted in a PhD program or even in postdoc. So I don't know if you have some comments or who wants to start this time. Okay, I'll pick one then. Isabel.
All right, so I think building on what I said previously, it's really good if you have some kind of connection to the group already somehow. For example, if you've either met the person who's advertising the position already, or if you know someone who can make a personal introduction. So I don't know about other people, but I tend to get so many PhD applications. At the moment, it's just because NLP is just really still growing. I can tell you that for the last one, I got 300 applicants. And it's just, I mean, it's just so many CVs to look through. And I mean, I look through them all, I read them all, and then when I have to make the shortlisting, I mean, with other people, I mean, of course, it's easier kind of when you've already known someone and you know if they would be a good fit, or if you know roughly what they'd be interested in based on having talked to them. It's just knowing a little bit more than what you can just read on the CV helps, right? So I think that would be my main thing. Otherwise, it would just be about making sure you have a good CV. I would say that for the people now in my research group, even though I say that it helps to know the people beforehand, most of them I didn't know beforehand and I had never met beforehand. It was just that they had a good CV, I interviewed them and I offered them a position. Right, so make sure you maybe gain a little bit of research experience beforehand, if at all possible. For example, as I think Gabriel or Paco said beforehand, by offering your time, contacting some people, trying to join some kind of research project, just to get maybe a publication or so on beforehand. Yeah, that would be my advice.
Thank you. Paco, do you have some advices in this area?
I have to say my journey was not the typical journey. So when I was doing my undergrad, I did a final, like a final thesis with one professor in the university who is a researcher, and I tackled one research project, nothing related with language. It was mostly multi-agent simulation. But that, and then I finished my career, my undergrad. I went on to work in the industry for 2 years. At a point, I felt like I needed something more. And just during that period, my former advisor emailed me with a research paper and say, hey, we are opening this area. We are opening applications for PhD. Are you interested? I didn't, it resonated with me and I just went for it. I didn't take a time to consider other options, to be honest, which doesn't, it may not sound great, but I just jumped into the opportunity, right? So opportunity came through my network and I jumped into it. I think something very similar happened for my postdoc, although there I was looking for opportunities and coming with a PhD from Mexico and somebody asking the questions, right? Is it important? I have to say, it is very important. If you're coming from with a place where it's not well connected with the rest of the academic community, and in NLP is not as connected as in other areas, Mexican institutions. So it was really hard for me, if I'm competing against people from say, Edinburgh or Stanford, and then you have this guy coming from Tec de Monterrey, it's really hard to compete, right? But fortunately, during my PhD, I had a research stay at CMU, and people from CMU got to know me. And the opportunity came from one professor who was moving to Qatar to start a new research program over there, and invited me to do the PhD, the postdoc there, right? So again, through opportunities, through my network. So my general recommendation to you is get to know people and increase your network and increase relationships, because those are going to help you. If people know how you work and people can vouch for the quality of your work, then you got a better chance of getting into places than if you're completely unknown.
Yes, go ahead, Gabriela. I saw that you already unmute yourself.
Yeah, I agree with Paco. I think that, and also Isabel, I think that social network, it's very important when you search a job inside academia or outside academia. I think it's very, very important to know people, and that people know how you work and what you're capable of. I also think that there is no one way to do it. I think that you have to try different things, different strategies. Keep trying, look for opportunities, look for job posting, write people. People is usually very nice when they receive, or at least I am very nice when I receive an email. Try to contact people, ask them, show your work, show who you are. And I think the opportunities will start to come up. You have to search for them. Don't wait for them to knock on your door.
Okay, I
would like to add a little bit to this discussion, just because, in my experience visiting institutions in Mexico and Latin America, I'm going to be very basic. There's something that I often find that is not well known, and is that, at least in the US, whenever you get admitted to a PhD program, you don't have to pay a cent. You have to get yourself into the institution, right, once you get admitted. But you are admitted with a full scholarship and a stipend, right? So that's something that is now well known from students in Mexico and Latin America. Sometimes I hear the question, well, how do I pay for it? You don't pay, you get paid to study, okay? The other thing I want to mention is that, yes, network is important. So if your professors, don't worry if you don't have any experience yet. I mean, it's still the case that a lot of students that are admitted to a PhD program have no publications. It still happens. I mean, it's getting rarer, right? So more often now undergrads are coming with publications. But that you shouldn't get discouraged if you don't have them, okay? You can still apply, you can still knock on doors. I also get a lot of emails, blanket emails from students that, hey, I want to be a PhD student with you, I want to do a PhD with you. And I also often don't answer them because it's a lot of them. But the ones I do answer are the ones that are very personal. The ones that I know the student actually did read the work. The student is actually really interested in my work. It is not just fishing for someone to answer. Because sometimes we get a lot of those that are like regular, like automatically generated emails that you can just tell this is automatically generated. So I'm not gonna. And sometimes we don't answer not because we don't want to, but just because our inbox gets very full. Very easily. So try again. The fact that you don't get a reply the first time, it doesn't matter. Send another email again, okay? Wait a week, send again. Don't get discouraged and don't take it personally, okay? So just knock on the doors and get the attention of people. If you're in an event like this and you're attending NACO, you can approach people. There's also Twitter. Now right now it's easier to get closer to people that are not in your institution or in your country because you get to discuss in Twitter sphere with them, right? So if you're active in other channels and you're trying to approach people, I mean, that's a good way to get to know people, even if, physically you're not there, or even if your community is too far away or isolated. So just try these things, okay? Knock on doors and be persistent. Just try hard.
Thank you. So I think I will ask some of the other questions that we have prepared, and probably after that we can open the microphone. So I encourage you for the attendees, if you want to ask this question yourself, we can just unmute you. So this one is very broad question, but and probably it's very focused on Latin America. But from your perspective, what is the panorama or the overview of NLP industry opportunities in Latin America? And so we can start with Gabriel.
I don't know that much. I can tell you here in Argentina, there are only one company that I know that's NLP. They do. They have a bot service where companies can rent an automatic bot for the first line of complaints. But I think that now the market has opened up thanks to the pandemic to the world, and most of my colleagues here in Argentina, they do work for companies abroad. So I don't think that the market is only about Latin America. You can start to search for job postings outside Latin America, and there the opportunities are much bigger, much better. For instance, in my case, I work for Proofpoint. That's an American company, and I work from here, from Argentina, and I am as an employee as the ones that are in the US. So there is no difference between me and them. And I know a lot of people in my position. So thanks to the pandemic, a good thing about the pandemic is that this happened. So we have a broader market now, job market at least.
Yeah, maybe a follow-up question would be why these opportunities are not so common in Latin America. Yeah, but before that, Paco, I don't know if you want to share your take on this.
I think I'm not so familiar with the market, to be honest, but I can tell you this. There are some companies that are doing some artificial intelligence. There are people doing NLP. It's just not as wide known. You have big companies like Cinepolis, right? I remember they contacted me at the time, who are doing some things. I'm pretty sure they are bots companies. I'm not aware at the moment, but I know that former colleagues of mine who were in the PhD with me in Mexico, they started startups, or they are doing some other type of work, semantic analysis and whatnot. And that is there are some opportunities to do work. I think it's important to do work in NLP for Latin America. I think the type of analysis and the type of work that we need is different than for a global company. So if there is not something out there, I think there's a fertile ground for startups to start tackling these problems.
Thank you. For Isabel, I don't know exactly how to adapt this question. I don't know if you want to comment something in the particular case of Latin America or your general view of the NLP industry, maybe outside from, I don't know, Europe or.
I think I'll just pass on that specific question.
I was wondering if there's someone in the audience that is based in Latin America and has some background on this. Like, I know Alexander Gelbuk is in the audience. Maybe he can tell us about where his students are going, if there's an industry absorbing NLP students over there. Alexander, are you still there?
Okay. So I remember one of my students is now head of artificial intelligence in YellowChat. And YellowChat is an international company, but it seems it's a Mexican company, which has more offices in India and United States and some other countries. And in general, my impression is that there are quite few opportunities in industry in Mexico. Probably that's all I can say now. I know much better the academic world in Mexico. There are, yes, a lot of opportunities. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing this. I also have the same impression, although I've never been really fully on industry, but I always wonder, for instance, when you search for jobs and, for instance, like positions, like, I don't know, some big enterprises, maybe like Google or Microsoft, they do have offices in several countries of Latin America. But when you look for positions, you never find like this research scientist position in these countries. And this is actually one doubt that I have. I don't know if it's shared by the rest of the audience. But why is it not so easy to have these opportunities of research scientists in industry, even for the big enterprise? They don't offer these positions in Latin America. Countries, at least in Mexico.
Yeah, I could potentially answer this one. So when you have different offices in countries, not all the offices support engineering and research roles. So for example, in Mexico, Facebook doesn't have an engineering office, right? And that you cannot just hire people for that specific location. Even when you do have engineering offices, it's not guaranteed that you have a research team in that specific location. And having people within a team, it's really important for them to be able to learn from others and to grow, right? Right now, things are getting a little bit more relaxed because of the pandemic. We've learned that remote roles are possible, but usually within a country, not across not across any location. So that is basically the answer that I would give, that in order to build teams in one specific country, we need an ecosystem, not only people who want to work on something. We need to have other companies as well that are working on this type of problems. So when there's rotation, you can hire from each other, etc. So there needs to be universities, of course, that are outputting graduates. So there needs to be a thriving ecosystem for as a prerequisite to open a research office in a particular location.
Thank you. Gabriel, would you like to comment on this as well?
Yeah, I think that most of the companies do not search for this type of talent in our countries. So when I mentioned that there is a lot of opportunities, it's not because the company has an office in the country, but you can work directly as being an employee from the company in the US, not necessarily having an office here. I think that at least in my experience, when big companies came to Argentina to open an office, they were searching for a particular type of talent, and that is not usually research related, because as Paco said, the ecosystems, at least here, are not that big, in which you can have an infinite number of people that will fill the positions that you eventually have. And I think that probably something that is our responsibility to build the ecosystem and to show that this ecosystem exists. And then probably companies will come and use that, use the resources in that ecosystem, or help building also the ecosystem. In general, at least for Argentina, big companies come here because it's also cheaper. So this is the reality, right? They come here because the resources are cheaper, and they look in particular for one type of resources. So we have to have this in mind in order to plan also the strategy for our ecosystems.
Thank you. Isabel, would you like to add something in this domain, or?
Yeah, perhaps just that at CheckStep, I think it's relatively unique, the setup that we have. We all work remotely, and it's partly because the company was founded during COVID-19. So we're all in different countries, and we don't have any physical offices yet. So if there's anyone from Mexico listening who'd really like to join CheckStep, it is possible also to live in Mexico and join CheckStep generally. So yeah, feel free to contact us. But I haven't seen it much with companies, that it's a fully remote setting with no offices and people work from everywhere. So yeah.
Okay, so I think we're going to take some of the last question before wrapping
I think
up.
Alexander raised a hand. Alexander, you want to comment?
Okay, I didn't see that. Yeah.
Yes, if possible, I would ask this question just the other way around. Not why we have so few research positions in industry here in Mexico, but why we have so good positions in academia. I think the difference is that Mexican government gives very good scholarships, which promotes research in academia. I think it's not that we have too few positions in industry. I think we are just high above the average in Latin America in academia, in opportunities in academia. Thank you.
Thank you. That's very interesting. Yeah, it's true. I mean, I don't know how is it in all countries, but in Mexico, if you pursue a PhD and everything, you get a scholarship from the government for living.
And extremely good scholarship, much better than a salary in many positions. It's really exceptional, the amount of scholarships and the amount of one scholarship that Mexico gives for masters and PhD. I have not seen it in most countries in the world. Nearly in any country, I did not see that perfect conditions for academia. I myself, I come from Russia, and imagine I came to Mexico because I feel it the best place for my research.
Okay. Okay, so we have another question from the audience. In your opinion, is there an AI winter coming in the next couple of years? Whether in academia or in industry as well. I don't know. We can start with you, Paco.
I personally, I don't think so. I think that is the other way around. We passed the winter, one winter at least, a few decades ago. I think that now industry is realizing that the applicability of AI and machine learning at scale is not only for big companies. You know, there you have medium size and even startups doing a lot more of machine learning. I would be betting the other way around. I think that machine learning engineering, for example, is going to replace software engineering. Machine learning is going to become, and AI is going to become a prerequisite to get a job in industry as software engineer. So I don't think we're seeing the AI winter. I think actually we're seeing a new wave of renaissance, right? We are going to have many more positions in the future, not only in big tech, but also in finance. You're seeing all the time in biotech. You're going to see it in even in government. Having machine learning is going to be something required.
Thank you, Gabriel. Would
Yeah,
you like to comment
I think
on
that
this?
I am more on the lines with Paco. I think that machine learning will become a commodity. So it will be very easy to do machine learning. Now it's much easier than it used to be. And probably most of the people doing machine learning as PhD will probably not write algorithms for companies to do machine learning, because everything will be, or most of the things that you will need are going to be already implemented. So I think that will become important is how to learn how to use these tools in particular domains. So the domain is a key aspect. We are talking here about NLP, but in order to do machine learning correctly, you have to understand the domain. And I think that the next problem or the next challenge will be how to use the tools that are already there in this particular domain.
Thank you, Gabriel and Isabel.
So I also don't think there will be an AI winter anytime soon. What I do think, though, is that people over time will learn more about what AI is and machine learning and what to expect. So when I talk to, especially interdisciplinary collaborators, they don't know so much about it. So they just think of AI as general artificial intelligence and, you know, this thing that can just solve everything automatically and it's this magic box and so on. That there are still people, there are lots of people who just don't know what it is, especially if they have a non-technical background. And there is still this hype we see a lot in the media whenever some big company releases something. I mean, most recently language models were really, really hyped in the media. And if people who don't have a technical background read this, they just think, okay, AI will solve all of our problems. So I think at some point this specific type of hype will die down and people will just know a bit more about what to expect. But I also think that, I mean, the future is digital in terms of what we need going forward in our society. Digital skills, machine learning skills, we'll need those going forward. So I don't think there'll be a winter either.
Thank you. Tamar, you would like to comment on this, or we go to the final thing?
Yeah, I think the final reflection is a good idea.
Yeah, so we are getting close to the time, and well, there are still some open questions, so we encourage you maybe to contact the panelists afterwards, or maybe through Twitter. So we are going to just make one final round, and this one is a very open question. So we ask our tutors or panelists if you can share some final thought or tip for the students or the attendees that are in this edition of the summer school that it's virtually held in Mexico. So who wants to go first? Okay, I can pick again. So maybe we can start again with Paco.
It is a big question, right? What is the main takeaways? My recommendation is trying to learn as much about NLP. Well, NLP is what we're kind of discussing here. Try to learn as much as you can, stay on top of things, read the latest papers. I think that subscribing to places like Archive Language and, you know, staying on top of what's happening on research is really important, having that curiosity. Understand also that you don't need to know all the details, because sometimes there's so many technical details that you know can overwhelm you. But just say, there is this paper, it's about this, and it's solving this problem, it's using high level these techniques. And if you need to come back to that information to apply it, you can come back and reread the paper into more detail. But at least having a general idea of where things are going in the field is very important. I also would like to see, you know, I would, if I could speak to myself when I was doing my PhD years, right? I would say, you know, really, if you're doing research, try to submit papers to top conferences, because sometimes it's intimidating, but getting the feedback is really important. So you can get feedback from people in the field, in academia, to give you counseling on how to get better at research, right? Don't think it as an end, like something that is definite, and submitting a paper is not the end product. It's a process, right? And this is something I referred to as before. Think about this as an iterative process. You are going to learn, and you're going to get a ton of rejections, and that's part of learning. So be open to that growth, because sometimes we hold back just because, you know, we don't think our research may be good enough. So there, and get some feedback, right? And that feedback will help you grow. You need to be open to opening your ears and opening your mind to the feedback, and understand what others are telling you and how to get better. And the other thing is just connect with people. Take NACL as an example, and look at people. How can you connect with them? How you can build a relationship outside of the conference, so people get to know you better. Volunteer as much as you can in this type of events. So the Mexican School is one way, but what can you do to get more visibility in the field? So get noticed, right? That people associate your name with your face, right? This is important, that people get to know you. And then you know, that will help you to get access to opportunities in the future, definitely. And if you have questions, or you would like to talk to me, ping me, and I will be happy to connect.
Thank you, Paco. Gabriel, would you like to go to take this turn?
Yes. Yes, I think it's important to belong to a community, to belong to a technical community, and to contribute to the community, and to let the community help you growing. And I think that something that worked for me was to work on the problem that I like, that I enjoy trying to solve, and try to come up with your own way to solve the problem, and also then go to the literature or to other people to see how they have solved. I think that I have usually used this process, and sometimes I found better solutions, and most of the time there were not so good solutions. But I think it's still important to keep your enthusiasm up, and to work on real problems that you enjoy, that you like, and that you want to solve, and to rely on the community to produce a better solution.
Thank you, Gabriel. And finally, Isabel, you have the last words.
All right, so I think there are two things I thought of while the others were talking. So one is most of you are still at the beginning of your research careers, and from the questions you asked in the chat, it seems like you're very, very uncertain about how to get where you want to get. And that's also how I felt when I was doing my master's and so on. And one thing that's really, really helped me is to think about people I really, really look up to and try to copy them in a way. So for most people, prominent people in academia, you can find their CVs online, they have a website and so on. You can check what they're up to, and you can actually look up what steps they took to get where they need to be. And so you can see, okay, you know, maybe I'm there, maybe I have to do an internship, or maybe I have to do this, or maybe this helps, maybe this helps. And yeah, I found it really, really helpful to to engage in this type of maybe academic stalking would be the right word, or I'm not sure. So the other thing is related to what someone said earlier about does it matter where you do a PhD or so on, and yes, I would definitely say these things matter. But the other thing is, as was already said, visibility. So visibility matters a lot, and I think it's because in NLP and in machine learning we write so many papers these days. It's just this flood of papers, and no one can read them all. And so it's important to somehow stand out. And one thing to do can be you can get active on Twitter, you can start a blog, for example. And when you have this type of visibility, it doesn't matter so much anymore where you did a PhD, where you did a postdoc, where you did your master's, because then people know you already. So the important thing is really for people to know you, I would say, and not so much where you did a PhD or master's. That's just a way of making connections and getting opportunities. Yeah, so that's it from my side.
Thank you.
That's wonderful. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah. So I think, yeah, we are perfect on time. So on behalf of the Mexican Summer School, we are really grateful, Isabel, Gabriel, Paco, for giving your time for this session. And for the rest of the attendees, yes, thank you.
Thank you so much.
We have a last session actually for the school, so but we have to switch the Zoom session. So thank you very much to everyone who attended. This session will be available on YouTube, and it was live also transmitted, and we see each other on the next session and final session. Thank you very much.
Jimena, you can stop the YouTube streaming. Bye.